The ਹਰਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਦੇ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਇਸ ਐਪੀਸੋਡ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪ ਸਭ ਦਾ ਕਰਦਾ ਹਾਂ ਹਾਰਦਿਕ ਸਵਾਗਤ। ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਸੈਗਮੈਂਟ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤ ਕਰਾਵਾਂਗੇ ਰਾਮਨਾ ਜੀ ਨਾਲ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਸਪਿਰਿਚੁਅਲ ਟੀਚਰ ਨੇ ਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਰਨੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਇੰਟਰਸਟਿੰਗ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ। ਜਨਮ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਜਾਪਾਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਇਆ, ਆਏ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਇਨਫਲੂਐਂਸ ਹੋਏ ਜ਼ੈਨ ਬੁੱਧਿਜ਼ਮ ਤੋਂ, ਲੇਕਿਨ 1993 ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਭਾਰਤ ਨੇ ਆਕਰਸ਼ਿਤ ਕੀਤਾ ਤੇ ਉਸ ਪਾਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਤੁਰੇ। ਹੁਣ ਇਹ ਭਾਰਤ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੀ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਤੇ ਸਪਿਰਿਚੁਅਲ ਟੀਚਿੰਗਸ ਦਾ ਪ੍ਰਚਾਰ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਇੱਕ ਕਿਤਾਬ ਵੀ ਲਿਖੀ ਗਈ ਹੈ ਜਿਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਕਿਸ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਅਸੀਂ ਓਵਰਵੈਲਡ ਹਾਂ ਅੱਜ ਤੇ ਕਿਸ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਨੂੰ ਸ਼ਾਂਤ ਰੱਖਣਾ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਅੱਜ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਬਾਰੇ ਕੋਈ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਲੈਣੇ ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੀ ਹੈ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਸੰਦੇਸ਼, ਉਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਅਗਾਹ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਰਾਮਨਾ ਜੀ ਦਾ। ਵੈਲਕਮ ਟੂ ਦ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ।
Thank you.
Welcome. So a little bit about yourself. As you were telling me, you were born in Japan, but you came to USA. But how did your, passion towards spirituality start?
Actually, my grandparents were immigrants, so
Okay.
I'm a second generation Japanese American
Right.
living in Berkeley. And I really got started very early on, at the age of 16 actually, where I was exposed to a Zen teacher. I was the first Zen master actually that came to America from Japan. His name was Suzuki Roshi.
Okay.
And so I learned meditation very early, back in 1968.
Right.
And it really put me on the spiritual path. From there, I think that from the 60s and 70s and even the 80s, I was oftentimes more living in ashrams rather than just a regular home.
Right.
So most of my life has been on the spiritual path like this.
Right. So you were influenced by Zen Buddhism, but how come you got attracted to India also, the Indian mysticism and Indian spirituality?
Yes, it was actually I was teaching at a growth center in Southern California called Esalen Institute.
Okay.
And the institute I was working for, Eli Jackson Bear, was the head of it. He went to India, and he came back so transformed after seeing this Indian master. It really took my interest. The next year, his wife went and was all of a sudden coming back as a spiritual teacher herself, and this is his transformation.
Okay.
So I was thinking there's really something happening in India here. So I felt like I must do this. So in 93, I finally went there. And I met Harilal Punja. We called him Papaji.
Okay.
And I studied with him for a number of years. And before he died, he really encouraged me to, like many of other people around him before he died, asked people to carry on his teaching.
Okay.
So that's kind of how I got my start.
Right. But what was it in Papaji that influenced you, and what were his teachings which motivated you to transform yourself from Zen Buddhist, kind of preacher to follow the teachings of Papaji?
Yeah, good question. Wow. Sometimes it's there's a term called the look of grace, where there is this, the teaching, I should say first of all that his teaching really is coming from an Indian master in southern India named Sri Ramana Maharshi, which actually Papaji named me after his teacher.
Okay.
And interestingly enough, I can just carry this a little further because it's a little unusual. Ramana Maharshi's teacher, his guru, actually called him his guru, was a mountain called Arunachala.
Okay.
And in southern India, that mountain is considered to be the actual body of Lord Shiva himself. They call that mountain Arunachala Shiva, and they say that that is actually a god that is speaking through people, right? So, but speaking, as they say, not in words, but they call it a silent transmission, which quiets the mind and opens the heart.
Right.
So to get back to your question about what happened between Papaji and I, somewhere throughout that time I was with him, I actually felt that transmission. I kind of felt that happen for me.
Right.
And what it did was it made a lot of the teachings that I kind of knew internally and read about and
Right.
kind of understood. It very much came alive for me after that. And it's interesting that they say that this the teaching is in the silence of Arunachala. It's not in words. It's a kind of a realization of the things you know in your mind
Right.
all of a sudden come alive. So that is actually what happened for me.
So what kind of transformation was there? Again, like you felt at peace being there.
Yes.
But what was those teachings which inspired you?
Right.
Because ultimately the purpose of any philosophy or any spiritual guide or teacher is to make you at peace with yourself.
Right.
So when we talk about that peace, what was that transformation which you felt being over there, and what were the basic teachings which prompted you to to be on this side?
Right. Beautiful. It's like there's a place in our attention that oftentimes we'll go to in meditation, where it is this kind of quiet and kind of expanded place where we really do feel that peace, right? And sometimes even feel like a real connection, like for a guru, for instance. There's a heart aspect of this, of a love that's present, and also a clarity, and like you said, a peacefulness.
Right.
And one of the things that that when I say things came alive for me was I found that place was in the background all of the time. It's like God always being present, but we're not always putting our attention on God, right? Well, something shifted for me where my attention went to this place. It was almost like, I call it time sharing a little bit. Like part of my attention was there in the backdrop of this peace and this heart and this oneness and this connection with God. And the other part of me was right here, like in the present world. So there was like instead of a place outside of my life that I would go to and consider and reflect upon sometimes, that it seemed to interface directly with that.
I appreciate your being at peace, but I would like to know the teachings, what you learned from your guru as to what is our purpose in life, why are we here, what should we do to become better human beings, and how we, if as a soul, because everybody is a soul over here, if you believe in that, so how
Absolutely.
to reach that path of enlightenment, where enlightenment doesn't mean to leave everything and just sit under a tree and remember God, but how in your daily life to incorporate those values so that you can be a better citizen to this world. We'll talk about this after this short break.
Okay.
ਸੋ ਹੁਣ ਤੱਕ ਜੋ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਮਨਾ ਦਾ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ 68 ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਇਨਫਲੂਐਂਸ ਹੋਏ ਇਸ ਪਾਸੇ ਆਉਣ ਨੂੰ, ਅਤੇ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ 1993 ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਭਾਰਤ ਦੇ ਇੱਕ ਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਮੰਨਦੇ ਨੇ, ਪਾਪਾ ਜੀ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਤਰਫ ਆਕਰਸ਼ਿਤ ਹੋਏ। ਇਹ ਸਾਊਥ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਸੀ, ਅਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਉੱਥੇ ਗਿਆ ਤਾਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਆਨੰਦ ਆਇਆ। ਆਈ ਫੈਲਟ ਐਟ ਪੀਸ, ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬੜਾ ਸ਼ਾਂਤੀ ਮਿਲੀ ਉੱਥੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ, ਅਤੇ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਨਾਲ ਮੇਰੇ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਪਰਿਵਰਤਨ ਆਇਆ। ਬਰਕਲੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਨੇ, ਅਤੇ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਇਹ ਹੁਣ ਭਾਰਤ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਰਹਿ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ, ਅਤੇ ਉੱਥੇ ਹੀ ਇਸ ਦਾ ਪ੍ਰਚਾਰ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ। ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਵਾਪਸ ਆ ਕੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਹੋਰ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਕਰਟੀਅਸ ਕਸਟਮਰ ਸਰਵਿਸ ਲਈ ਜਾਣਿਆ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ ਤਾਜ ਪਾਰਕ ਕਨਵੈਨਸ਼ਨ ਸੈਂਟਰ, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ 700 ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ 1200 ਵਿਅਕਤੀਆਂ ਲਈ ਬਰਥਡੇ, ਐਨੀਵਰਸਰੀ, ਬ੍ਰਾਈਡਲ ਸ਼ਾਵਰ, ਇੰਗੇਜਮੈਂਟ, ਵੈਡਿੰਗ ਜਾਂ ਆਫਿਸ ਪਾਰਟੀ, ਐਗਜ਼ੀਬਿਸ਼ਨਸ, ਪ੍ਰੋਡਕਟ ਲਾਂਚਸ ਤੇ ਕਾਰਪੋਰੇਟ ਇਵੈਂਟਸ ਕਰਵਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ। ਖੂਬਸੂਰਤ ਇੰਟੀਰੀਅਰ ਤੇ ਬਿਹਤਰੀਨ ਅਮੈਨਿਟੀਜ਼, ਲਾਜਵਾਬ ਖਾਣਾ, ਫ੍ਰੈਂਡਲੀ ਸਟਾਫ, ਸਪੇਸ਼ੀਅਸ ਬੈਂਕਟ ਹਾਲ, ਖੁੱਲੀ ਪਾਰਕਿੰਗ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇੱਥੇ ਹੀ ਮਿਲੇਗੀ, ਅਤੇ ਇਹ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਬੈਸਟ ਪੋਸੀਬਲ ਐਕਸਪੀਰੀਅੰਸ ਹੋਵੇਗਾ। ਅੱਜ ਹੀ ਆਪਣਾ ਅਗਲਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਇੱਥੇ ਕਰਾਓ। Once again, welcome back to the program. ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਸੈਗਮੈਂਟ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਮਨਾ ਜੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਂਝ ਪਾ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਤੇ ਦੱਸ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਕਿਸ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਹ ਪ੍ਰਭਾਵਿਤ ਹੋਏ ਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਪਿਰਿਚੁਅਲਿਟੀ ਦਾ ਰਸਤਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਅਪਣਾਇਆ। ਪਰ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਦਾ ਕੀ ਮਕਸਦ ਹੈ, ਕਿਉਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਆਏ ਹਾਂ, ਕੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਫਿਲਾਸਫੀ ਹੈ, ਕਿਸ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਇਹ ਮੈਸੇਜ ਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰਚਾਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ, ਆਓ ਇਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਕੁਝ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਹਾਂ। Yes, Mr. Ramana. So you were telling before the break about you felt at peace being with your guru, who you called dearly as Papaji. So basically, from his teachings, tell us what is the purpose of life? Why are we here? What all we should do to become better human beings, being on this planet?
Yes. As I said before, that's quite an all-encompassing question. It's great. I feel like the essence of the teaching is the discovery of who we really are. In fact, Papaji's teacher, Sri Ramana Maharshi, who Papaji gave me his name, his path was called the path of self-inquiry.
Okay.
He said that no matter what spiritual path that you're on, there's going to be as you know, in India, there's many spiritual paths, and he's speaking mostly about this, the spiritual paths in India, that there is a point, he says, where one has to realize who one really is. In other words, we have our mind and our personality and our body, and there's God, and then there is, like, what is the real interface with that, right? So the basic teaching is that if you find out who you are, it is outside of just the mind and the body and our individual consciousness, that we are joined with a larger consciousness,
Right.
that everyone is in that one consciousness. So that one consciousness is God. And the basic teaching is that we're actually not separate from that God. That even in Christianity they talk about it that way, where Jesus talks about how the Father and I are one, and his teaching is that the heaven is within us.
Right.
So these kinds of pointings to that, where there is a sense of a merging with a larger consciousness that we can maybe call God at that point. That is the basic teaching. So
Right.
this is why I mentioned before that, kind of on the side with you, that the teaching really is in this silence,
Right.
right? That if we can get quiet enough, and if our heart can be quiet enough, we can move into that place of who we really are.
Okay. So basically, what you're saying is God is not any separate entity sitting up above the clouds, but it
Exactly.
is universal consciousness. So we as individual consciousness have to merge with that universal consciousness.
Right.
Now the question arises how to do that, because I am a soul, I know. There's a universal soul. So when you say you have to merge in that universal consciousness, what steps need to be taken? You were talking about meditation.
Yes.
So how does meditation help you to align with that universal consciousness?
Ramana Maharshi has a methodology he calls self-inquiry.
Okay.
It actually is a tradition as well,
Right.
as part of Hinduism. It's
Okay.
a part of Hinduism that is called Advaita Vedanta,
Okay.
which is a path of knowledge.
Right.
And in that, one actually goes about in the quiet space
Right.
to ask that question, who am I? And in asking that question, there are layers that we start going through. I'm this mind, I'm this personality, I'm this body, and this but as you go deeper into it, you start feeling
Right.
something much deeper. And when you start feeling into that quiet space, all of a sudden, what happens is this sense of the separate sense of I starts disappearing.
Right.
And yet, there is still a deeper part of this inquiry still going on.
Right.
So there is a point where I've put together something called Radical Awakening. In fact, this is the name of my book. It's called Radical Awakening, The 7 Steps to Your Radical Awakening.
Right.
Finding the calm in the storm of overwhelm. Because what I find is that instead of going from the top down, I call it the top down method. You just
Right.
keep asking yourself, who am I, who am I, who am I, who am I? Until you kind of find yourself, right?
Right.
And then start establishing yourself in that. What I found was, in what I call the radical awakening process, is that that I actually can guide people into the actual experience of that.
Okay.
And then from that experience of that, we look the other way and look from this place of oneness and who we really are. How does our personality fit into this? How does the world fit into this? How does our mind fit in? And from there, we discover our purpose from the viewpoint of this deep knowing.
Okay. So again, as you said, realizing who you are, it's a step which you have to go in and then realize who you are. But once you realize who you are, and as we, generally we are identifying ourselves with other things like my business, my job, my belongings, my, everything. So once you start understanding that who you are, that you are a soul, how does that change your perspective? What happens? And when, especially in this fast paced world where we are always running,
In the storm of overwhelm.
in
This
sto-
is what
absolutely.
the book's
So
about.
that's
right?
what you said the book is all about.
Yes.
So in our next episode, I would like to focus on this particular aspect as to how living within this all overwhelmed life, how to realize yourself and how to become a better human being. So thank you very much for this perspective, and we'll continue with our discussion in our next episode. Thanks for your time. ਸੋ ਅੱਜ ਜੋ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਮਨਾ ਜੀ ਨੇ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਅਸਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਮਕਸਦ ਕੀ ਹੈ ਜੀਵਨ ਦਾ, ਇਹ ਰਿਅਲਾਈਜ਼ ਕਰਨਾ ਹੀ ਸਾਡਾ ਪਰਪਸ ਹੈਗਾ। ਅਸੀਂ ਅਜਾਈ ਹੀ ਇੱਧਰ ਉੱਧਰ ਭੱਜਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਲੇਕਿਨ ਯੂਨੀਵਰਸਲ ਕੌਨਸ਼ੀਅਸਨੈਸ ਨਾਲ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਇੰਡੀਵਿਜੂਅਲ ਕੌਨਸ਼ੀਅਸਨੈਸ ਨੂੰ ਅਲਾਈਨ ਕਰਨਾ ਹੈ। ਰੱਬ ਕੋਈ ਇੱਕ ਸੈਪਰੇਟ ਐਂਟੀਟੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਿ ਅਸਮਾਨ 'ਚ ਬੈਠਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਹੈ। ਇਹ ਕੌਨਸ਼ੀਅਸਨੈਸ ਨਾਲ ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਅਲਾਈਨ ਕਰਨਾ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਨੂੰ, ਤਾਂ ਆਟੋਮੈਟਿਕਲੀ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਚੱਲ ਜਾਏਗਾ ਕਿ ਸਾਡਾ ਪਰਪਸ ਕੀ ਹੈ। ਪਰ ਇਸ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਆਪ ਮਿਹਨਤ ਕਰਨੀ ਪਏਗੀ। ਅਤੇ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਮੈਡੀਟੇਸ਼ਨ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਇਹ ਸਟੈਪਸ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ, ਇਹ ਅਲਾਈਨਮੈਂਟ ਦੇ, ਇਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਫੋਕਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਹੀ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਕੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਨੂੰ ਪਹਿਚਾਨ ਸਕੀਏ।